say it like it is. You don't care what you think of it.
I knew what Dale Hansen is. Unfortunately, right? Unfortunately.
I remember Dale Hansen countdown when I first came.
So Jerry Jones and I and a couple other guys.
This has been a great year, Ted. Dale.
We love Dale. We love Dale.
Dale. He keeps you in touch with sports.
If you're ready, jump right in. Dallas Dialogue with Dale.
Hola, hola, hola. Welcome to the first of hopefully many episodes of Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen, an offshoot of Beyond the Policy covering everything Dallas, sponsored by Northwest Insurance Agency. I'm your host, Mark Villasana, and joining me as always is my BFF, marketing manager for Northwest Insurance. Although she's not my boo, she's still my favorite Jew, Miss Lila Levy. Hey, Lila, how are you doing?
Hi, Mark. How are you? Hola, hola, hola.
Shalom, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Here's a loaded question. Anything new?
Yeah, I'm really excited about today.
Tell me.
And I know I say that before when we go into every Beyond the Policy podcast.
You say that about everything, but go ahead.
I do, but this one is extra special,
okay.
And we're about to find out why. So I'm really excited. And what you want to, I think you should ask me what I'm drinking today.
I'm afraid to ask, but go ahead. Do tell me what you're drinking.
What do you think I'm drinking?
I'm going to say you've got some nitro brew and you've had a couple shots of espresso. Maybe you snorted a couple lines of coffee. I don't know.
Not even close.
Tell me. Why?
I am drinking 128 ounces of water.
Do you plan on being here in the bathroom the whole time?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both.
Why? Now, why water? Tell me.
Because who we have on today and this baby that our Beyond the Policy podcast gave birth to,
yes,
I need to be hydrated.
Yeah.
I have got to be hydrated and ready for who we are about to you're about to introduce.
Well, when you put it that way, I understand. So I understand we'd be going in and out.
Yeah,
so
I will, but I'll be here for the important parts.
Make sure you take your hall pass.
Okay.
They will be checking. Yeah, you're right. We are. Who would have thought when we started doing this thing in April that
in April,
and we are about to co-host the show with our guest, our co-host. I didn't even say guest anymore. Co-host, Lila.
Right.
So I want to get to that, and I want to introduce him. But I want to tell a little bit about what we're going to be doing. We had the podcast, as you're fully aware, and we had Mr. Dale Hansen on a couple weeks ago, and it went so well. I loved listening to him, and I could tell the fire was still in his eyes. I could tell he still had a lot to say. So you and I came up with the idea almost simultaneously while he was speaking that, hey, if there's any way we could continue this conversation with Dale, we should try to do it. So we got to talking to him, and believe it or not, I don't know what you did, how you did it, but you convinced him that it was a great idea. So
I asked.
Okay, is that what it was? Okay.
I asked.
Well, I don't know what you did.
And Dale likes you and I for some weird reason.
Well, I think it's that combination of Mexican and Jew thing.
I think it is too. I think that Jose and Golda sealed the deal.
That should be the name for the new. I think that's a new name, new show, Jose and Golda. I like
that's
that.
Our next podcast.
So what we're going to do with Dale, we're going to let him give one of his infamous commentaries. I can't wait to hear the first one. Anyway, he's going to go, and then after that, you and I are going to kind of discuss
with
what
Dale.
he has to say. Maybe see if we can add anything to the conversation. I don't know that we can, but we're going to give it our best.
We're going to try.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. I'm going to introduce Dale here in just a second, but before I do, I kind of want to talk a little bit about comebacks. Right, this is Dale's big comeback.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you he had no idea he was going to be doing it on an insurance podcast.
With Jose and Golda.
With Jose and Golda, yeah. Okay. But I do want to talk about comebacks because I have seen some notable ones, Lila. I've seen Michael Jordan come back, George Foreman, and I think I'll see another great one today. And today is not only a big day because of what we are launching, but also because of who we're launching it with. And so it made me reflect today, Lila, on comebacks, because today not only marks the beginning of something I think will be huge, but quite frankly, it is a culmination of somewhat of a comeback for me as well. You see, Lila, believe it or not, I once had everything. Although my family, they came from humble beginnings. My grandfather actually picked fruit coming up when he first came to this country. And my father worked very hard to give us what we had. So I can't say I was privileged, but I was well taken care of and loved. Nevertheless, I did not come from money. Anyway, somehow, Lila, through hard work and this little insurance business of mine, I managed to become successful. I started this in 1996, as you're fully aware, with my brother and my father, and it took off really quicker than I thought it would. But we were successful beyond my wildest dreams. I had it all: the fancy cars, the big beautiful house in Highland Park, and the pretty little family to show for it. However, when things were going the best, I started believing in myself too much and forgot who helped me get where I was, and more importantly, I forgot where I came from. It was a classic story of someone who makes it big and then proceeds to lose it all because his head got too big, which is pretty hard, Lila, if you've seen the actual size of my head. Okay. So I was boozing, partying, hanging with the wrong crowd. I became an awful human being. The more successful I became, the more destructive I became. I didn't know how to handle success. Quite frankly, I blew it. The house, the cars, the wife, and in fact, I almost lost my children and my business. This business here that's sponsoring this podcast. But with the grace of God and unconditional love of my children and a new wife, I was able to rebuild myself bigger and stronger than ever. But it has not been easy making it back. It actually has been hell. But I'm determined, Lila, to stay this time. I'm 56 years old, an age, quite frankly, I never thought I would reach. But I'm here, and God has given me another chance. I want to ensure that I make the most of it. But more importantly, I have to remind myself daily, this is not because of me. I am not the most crucial person in the world, and I am a culmination of those who have helped me get to where I once was and where I now plan to stay. This time, I want to enjoy those whom I love and not take everything so seriously nor take it for granted. It has not been easy, Lila, but thank God I've been given another chance. So now that I've gotten off my soapbox, I can't believe I'm about to do this.
I know,
Lila,
I know.
today is not only the much needed and much anticipated comeback of the Dale Hansen, a man whose voice is so desperately needed in these uncertain times, but it is also my comeback. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. So that being said, Lila, ladies and gentlemen, and insurance voyeurs across the world, please join me in welcoming back to the DFW media landscape, Northwest Insurance's own Dale Hansen with our new monthly podcast, Dallas Dialogue with Dale.
Ooh.
Hello, Dale.
Wow.
Hi,
Wow.
Dale.
Hello, Dale.
Well, you kind of scared me with that story. Now, I tell
Well,
you.
you know,
Yeah, it is interesting though the way you say that, because in all seriousness, comebacks almost scare me.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of a lot of them. You mentioned Michael Jordan, who I was a huge fan of when he played, but when he kept coming back, I'm like, no, stay retired. And I did this for a while. I retired almost 4 years ago, and when I thought about people saying to me, well, why don't you come back? And we need your commentaries again. We need your voice again. I was always afraid of it. And then Lila, I was waiting for Lila to call, and she finally did. And I'm looking forward to it again, because there have been a lot of days over the last couple of years where I've been sitting in my recliner screaming at my TV saying, I wish I had that platform to speak out about that. And I'm looking forward to this. I really am.
Well, I can say that whole dialogue I went off was an inspiration on you. I mean, just having you on and your commentary inspired me. And because it is somewhat of a comeback for me, it's a culmination of hard work to get back to where I was. And the end result is Lila having Dale Hansen co-host a podcast with us. So that's fabulous. And Lila can be persuasive, can't she?
She can be. She can be. I tell you, it is kind of funny, though. I mean, people always, I've heard it so many times that I'm this arrogant, egotistical, cocky guy. And I don't really think I am, probably because I'm so arrogant and egotistical. I don't notice it. But it did bother me for a long time when I retired, when I had a couple of quick offers to do different podcasts or radio or whatever, that, I thought, I liked what I did. I was proud of what I did. And then people, when I run into them now, they're like, oh, man, I miss your voice. I miss your commentaries. And then I started thinking, well, let's just let them leave that thought there. Let's just leave them with the thought of how much they enjoyed it. So I was almost afraid, believe it or not, to try it again. But then, as you say, Lila convinced me that this should be something I should do. And then my wife, the lovely Mrs. Hansen, will tell you that I got into it. It was fun to get back on the keyboard, back in my little office, back on the computer, and bang out some of my thoughts. So you want to try it?
I would love to hear one.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, I think I've been quiet long enough. It's been 3 years and 9 months since I retired from that little TV job I had in Dallas for 41 years. But Mark and Lila have given me the opportunity to start a dialogue again. And while some of you might be happy about this, others of you not so much, it is a dialogue that is long overdue. There have been too many times when I had something to say and couldn't, but now I can and I will. I try to remind myself almost every day how important it is that we all speak out. And I'm reminded of just how important that is by the German pastor's quote from the 30s that I think is every bit as important now. Speaking about the atrocities of Hitler's Nazi regime, the pastor said, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." That pastor was a Nazi supporter in the early days, but he eventually learned, as so many of us need to learn now. Our country is broken, and we are divided by a single man. And I do blame Donald Trump for what I think is an incredibly simple reason. We've been divided before. Those of us old enough to remember the political divide about the Vietnam War. We remember the divide about the fight for civil rights in the 60s. Young people of color beaten because they dared to sit at a North Carolina lunch counter, beaten because they dared to drink from the whites-only water fountains, beaten because they dared to study in the classrooms of our schools reserved for the white students only. So we then watched our cities burn. It wasn't as bad as the Civil War, but it was the Civil War of my generation, and yet I didn't lose a single friend. Oh, I lost friends on the battlefields in Vietnam. But despite every argument I had with my friends back then, no one kicked me out of a card game as they do now. We played golf together, we drank a beer, we argued, then made plans to do it again tomorrow. Because our president always tried to unite us back then, even when they didn't. That's the way America used to be, and that's the way America should be now. I talked to my sister last month, first time in 9 years, because her view of the world and the way she thinks about our politics has led her to the dark side. But I'm trying to fix that relationship, and we are talking again, but it's not easy. It's a dialogue we need to have, though, because there's no good reason to hate those we disagree with, even when we do think they're wrong. My best friend is so conservative, he thinks Fox News is too liberal, and I know he's wrong about that. We don't agree about much, but it doesn't matter to me that he's wrong about everything, and it doesn't matter to him that I am. I know the man's heart. I know he's a good man. We just disagree about politics, and I'm not going to lose a good friend because his politics aren't that good to me. Gandhi said, honest disagreement is often a good sign of progress. And we can only make that progress and find a better way forward and make that better America if we have that honest dialogue, even if we do disagree about almost everything. I've been quiet long enough. It's time we all speak out. And every month now we will on this podcast with Mark and Lila.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dale. I think I can say for all of us here, the fastball's still there. Yeah.
I kind of like that one.
Yeah,
I have to admit, I kind of like that one. I read it to my other sister in Iowa, and she said, "Let me guess, you just wrote that since I talked to you a couple of hours ago?" And I said, "Yeah, matter of fact, I did. You inspired me, and you two have inspired me to write again. I hope people enjoy it, and I hope people are not afraid of disagreeing. That's the main point I'm trying to make here. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing about our politics or about our favorite sports teams or whatever it might be. But we've lost that somehow, and I think we need to get that back."
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose of this show, and that's one of the reasons you came back is so we could have a dialogue.
Absolutely.
So people that from all different perspectives can hear things. So there's so much to unpack in that little commentary. Just the fact that we got to hear it that's a whole podcast we could do on that. But we'll do all that and more when we come back with the Dallas Dialogue with Dale, with Mark and Lila and Dale.
In the heart of Dallas, we know that life moves fast. And when it does, you need an insurance company that's as reliable as the city we call home. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we're proud to be a part of the Dallas community, offering customized coverage to protect your home, your car, and your family. Whether you're navigating downtown or enjoying a weekend in the suburbs, we've got you covered every step of the way. We're more than just an insurance company. We're your Dallas neighbor, always here to help. Northwest Insurance, proudly serving Dallas.
Okay, we are back with Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen. Lila, can you believe we just heard the first commentary in, I believe, over 3 years?
Yeah, almost 4 years,
Is
right?
that correct, Dale?
Coming up on 4 years,
Yeah.
September of 21. It doesn't really seem possible in many ways, but yeah, it's been almost 4 years.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah,
like Couch
yeah.
Dale.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. I could tell though when we interviewed Dale a couple weeks ago that you still had the fire. There was still a lot you had to say, and so was that the main reason you decided to jump back in this?
Oh, without question. And this particular commentary was one that I've wanted to have a platform for a long time. This falling out that I've had with my oldest sister, she's 2 years younger than me, has bothered me a great deal. But it was actually spurred by a reunion that I went to in my old hometown. I've been to every 5-year reunion since I graduated from high school in 1966. Every 5 years, I would go back. And not to go too deep into the weeds with this story, but after like my third reunion, former Cowboys coach Jimmy Johnson said to me one time, you ought to be picking up the tab. He picked up the tab at the bar for the entire graduating class. Now, he was from Port Arthur, so it was a huge class. Well, I only had like 59 kids. And I said, yeah, I think I can do that. So I went back. We rented out the country club. And I picked up the tab for the entire graduating class. And we had a buffet, and then we had open bar. At the end of the night, the waitress comes up to me and she goes, is this really true, Mr. Hansen? Are you paying for the entire bill? I said, yeah. She goes, well, I don't know how to say this to you, but not many people ate the buffet, finger foods and like. She goes, but I still have to charge you for the entire thing. And she goes, and that's $90. And I went, well, I think I can handle that. And she goes, well, with the $90, that brings the total bill to $810.
There goes the Christmas bonus.
Yeah. So my wife was with me, and I said, you take a check? She said, yeah. And my wife said, what do you want to hear? I said, well, I give her like $1,000 and for a tip, because I thought the bill would be like $3,000-4,000.
Yeah.
Well, the point of that long story is there was a friend of mine who was a year behind me. He has been to every one of my reunions every 5 years. He has drank at my open bar every 5 years for 50 plus years now. At the last reunion, which was my 55th, he walks up to me and says, and a good friend of mine, a guy named Tom Stoner, and he says to me, how's it possible that two guys who grew up in the same town, played on the same sports teams, vacationed together, had the same teachers, we are 180 degrees different politically? And quite honestly, that question still bothers me because I don't have an answer for it yet. But in two parts, it struck me as incredibly odd. One, how is that possible? Why is that? But what really bothered me and why I do not back off blaming Donald Trump for the division in this country, as I said to him, why didn't you say that to me the other 50 years we were here? Not one time in 50 years did he ever ask me about my politics or comment on my liberal politics. And my liberal politics are pretty much out there for the world to see.
Right.
I had no idea how he voted, nor did I care. I had no idea what his politics were, nor did I care. And apparently he didn't care enough to confront me at any time in 50 years. But at our 55th reunion, he's bothered by my politics, and we had a falling out. Yeah. We had a legitimate falling out. I blame both of us, but and that just spurred me to this argument here. Well, what's happened to us?
Well, it takes two to tango, first of all. So I understand you do take some fault in, and when we were discussing earlier, we were going to be talking about this subject, and we got some of your copy. I wrote some things down, and one of the things I wrote down was media. Number two was current administration. So current administration is fed in this narrative that it's has to be us against us. It can't be. It's us against them. Excuse me. So it used to be. And I don't want to get too involved in politics. I have to remember at the end of the day, I'm a salesman.
Yeah, I'll do that for you.
Do that for me, Dale. Carry the load for me on that. But it used to be the president was a uniter. no matter what. The first thing he said at his inauguration was, I don't care who you voted for, I'm going to be a president for all. That was thrown out the window in 2016, and it's been thrown out the window even more so this time. So no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you have to acknowledge reality. And reality is the current administration is fed into a narrative of us versus them. Thoughts, Lila?
I agree. I very much agree with that. It is us versus them, and a lot of division and a lot of non-truths.
Well, yeah, and then what happens? You get a mob mentality, don't you feel? I feel once people start,
Of course, I mean,
once the ball gets rolling, people are,
it's easy to
Right.
be caught up in the emotion.
It's almost like I tell my current wife about my ex-wife, I'm a caricature of myself to my ex-wife. I'm sure I was bad, but I'm not that devil she's created in her head, or she's probably telling friends, and she's probably not as bad as I remember her being. Obviously, there was a reason we didn't stay married, but I've created a caricature of her, and I think that's what the media has done. They created caricatures where liberals are just libtards, and they're out burning bras and having abortions and every day, and transgender people are feeding dinner to the kids while they eat them, and same on the same spectrum. Conservatives are all wear half shirts and barrels around with suspenders, and so I feel the media really plays in that. It makes me upset because I have friends on both sides. I have really good friends. As a matter of fact, I would say 95% of my friends are all hardcore conservative. And what I found, Dale, you tell me, they're right. We just don't talk politics.
Well, some of us do, some of us don't. But that's an incredible point that I also wanted to make. Most of my friends don't.
Yeah.
My liberal friends have only liberal friends.
Yeah.
My conservative friends have only conservative friends. One of my favorite stories, one of my most incredibly liberal friends, he's a Harvard graduate, he's a judge, and my other friend is a high school graduate. He's a roofer from Lancaster. And I was the third wheel at our cigar bar arguments and discussions. And I always said, I'll sit in the middle because I am indeed the voice of reason here. And I'm not, but it was a good argument to make. But I did say to my friend, the judge, one night, how many conservative friends do you have? And he goes, well, I know some conservatives. I said, no. How many of them have been to your house for dinner? How many of them have you been out to dinner with? How many of them have you ever vacationed with? What I'm talking, that's your friend. He's a conservative. He said none. He said none. And as I said to my conservative friend, other than me, who do you consider a friend that is a crazy liberal that watches MSNBC and so on? And he said the same thing. And he said, well, I don't. And I think that's the problem. It's like in the 2020 election. When Trump was making the argument that he actually won, I think it was easy for his supporters to believe it because they didn't know anybody who voted for Joe Biden. They didn't know anybody. The flip side of that is that when Trump won in 2016, my liberal friends couldn't believe it because they didn't know anybody who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. And I told a lot of them, I said, I think Hillary Clinton's going to lose for a lot of crazy reasons. My conservative friend said, well, of course she is. And my liberal friend said, there's no way. Right. Then you fast forward to 2020. And I think that is where if I will go to my conservative friend and tell him about some story that I've read in the Washington Post or I've seen on the CNN or MSNBC. He knows nothing about it. I mean, just this very morning, I'm watching MSNBC. They're talking about what's going on with the Ukraine policy. I switch over to CNN. They're talking about the argument that the Trump administration is having with Harvard. I flip back to MSNBC. Now they're talking about the fight with Harvard. I then switch to Fox. They're talking about Joe Biden. I'm like, what did Joe Biden and his allies and supporters know, and when did they know it? And I'm like, we're done with Joe Biden. Yes, I think it was tragic what did or did not happen there, but that argument's over. There's a few more things on my plate right now than whether or not Joe Biden was or was not as mentally sharp as he claimed to be. There's just a few more issues that I think we should be discussing. So I will go to my conservative friend and I'll ask him about it. He doesn't have a clue because he watches only Fox, and he admits that he only watches Fox, and he doesn't have a clue. But then at the same time, if you go watch MSNBC, you've got no idea what the other side of the argument is. They only present one side. And then the real problem becomes when you go to CNN, they're trying, I believe this, they're trying to give both sides of the argument. So consequently, they don't please anybody. Right. And they're doing what I think we should be doing. They have the liberal on espousing the liberal argument. Then they turn to Scott Jennings, and he says something, in my opinion, incredibly stupid. But that's fine. He gives the conservative point of view. But nobody really wants that anymore. Nobody wants it. Right. They want to hear affirmation for what they believe. And I go back to the Gandhi quote. Honest disagreement is a good sign of progress. But we don't have honest disagreement anymore. CNN, I really do. I think is trying to give us some honest disagreement, but it's not working.
Well, it's just not working. Backed into the corners. The media's fed into us.
I think the media is more than any other time where I'm consuming media. I think the media is out of control, and the way they twist the headlines. And
headlines are horrible.
They are. I think the media is out of control.
Yeah, but this I think is why, and I think it's been a problem for a long time. But I've said this forever. I'm a big defender of the media. I really am. But having said that, one of the biggest problems that this country had and still continues to suffer from is when the media, especially broadcast television news, realized they could make money from the news. Right. It was a public service for decades. The broadcast networks had to carry the news and public affairs programming. And that's why the newscast in the beginning was like 15 minutes long. And the public affairs programming was an hour, but it was buried at the latest possible times and on a weekend where they knew no one was watching. But once they realized, especially the local stations, it's such a cost-effective moneymaker, then it became, well, now we have to attract ratings. And the newspapers kind of led that charge as well. We got to get readers. So they put up a bogus headline. Not as bad, I would argue, as what a lot of television stations do today with their teases, and then they come back and that's not what you tease. That's not the story. But I think it's money driven. Nothing wrong with that, but we've lost sight of what that particular job should be and the importance of that job. And I get so upset about this because on Memorial Day, I watched a 5-part documentary on the Vietnam War. And it was called The Turning Point on Netflix. And I'm assuming it's going to be there for a while. So I would strongly suggest that anybody watch it if you can. But I watched all 5 hours last night. I went to bed very late. I started watching it about 9 o'clock. I thought, let me just see what this is. Next thing I know, it's 2:30 in the morning and I'm sitting in my recliner crying my eyes out. Because what this country did and the way the media covered the Vietnam War and accepted the lies of the people in charge, and thousands of people died. But it's back to your main point, Mark. As bad as I think Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson and so many others were during that time, publicly they always tried to unite us.
Publicly, they tried to unite us.
It was like the cliche that just pops out of the computer when you start writing a speech. Okay, let's just insert that because we got to say this. Right. Now, behind the scenes, they were lying through their teeth and calling everybody names. But publicly, for the most part, we're trying to make this good for everybody. And I think that day is gone.
I want to get more about news for profit because you have some inside, information you can probably share with us. Al, you've seen the industry change over the years. But let's take a quick break, Lila. You've been listening to Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen, and we will be right back.
Running a business is unpredictable, but with the right insurance, you can face the unexpected with confidence. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we protect what matters most: your people, your property, and your future. Whether it's liability, property, or workers' comp, we tailor coverage to fit your business needs. Because when you're covered, you can focus on what really matters: growing your business. Call us today for a free quote at 1-855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com. Northwest Insurance Agency, protection that works as hard as you do.
Okay, we are back with Dallas Dialogue with Dale. We were talking to Dale about how the media has changed over the years. Dale, you have quite years of experience in the media and all types, in radio, TV, even print. How have you seen, can you be specific how you've seen the media change where now it's not even about the truth, it's just about profit?
Well, I do think in many ways they still think it's about the truth, but as long as the truth leads to their profit.
Yeah.
And again, I do throw Fox under the bus for most of this. I mean, it's like when they declared Joe Biden the winner in 2020, and the I'm not even sure what you call it, the people that sit behind in the closet and they know how the vote's going to come out, the analyst of it, right. And he then called Arizona for Joe Biden.
I remember. And
Brett Baer, who prides himself on being a journalist, and he's probably the closest thing they have to one at Fox, but he's epileptic. Oh, we can't do that. We can't call Arizona. The Trump organization is calling. They're happy. Then they ended up firing the guy who made that decision, when in fact he should have been given a raise. I mean, he was the one who knew that despite Arizona being so close, that Biden was going to win it, which then would mean that Trump was going to lose. Fox, if they had any journalistic integrity, would have treated him like he's Steve Kornacki, the guy on MSNBC in the khaki pants. That was a brilliant journalistic decision that the guy made. And Fox's response was, we're losing audience because of it. Trump's not happy because of it. You're out. Yeah. And I think MSNBC does exactly the same thing. I think at the same time, it's much like the racist among us. Have you ever talked to, at least I haven't, have you ever talked to a racist and you say to him, why would you say such a racist thing? And he goes, well, I'm not a racist. I've never had a guy look me in the eye and admit to me that they indeed are a racist. Much like I've never had a reporter look me in the eye and say, well, I slant my news coverage to benefit or criticize Donald Trump. I don't think there's a reporter in Washington, D.C. Now, the real question becomes, do they know? Because I've said this 1,000 times. When the Tucker Carlsons and the Sean Hannitys of the world are going on Fox and they're referring to the riot that took place at the Capitol, and they're referring to it as your typical tourist tour, how do they shave in the morning? I mean, how do they lie in bed at night and go, I can't wait for the day when my son or daughter grows up and they can look at this and then they'll see that dad called it a tourist trip. I don't know how you do that, but that's on both sides. I mean, I've seen, I'll give you one of the classic examples about this. And again, it goes back to the journalistic integrity. Unfortunately, today, I believe, is driven too many times by the dollars. I found a liberal radio network. I have no idea what it is, but I just clowning around on Sirius.
Satellite?
Yeah, on satellite. And it's a very liberal. I thought, okay, I'll listen to it. Kind of boring, quite honestly, but I'm listening to it. And I'm driving into work, and this guy says, I can't believe what I just heard from the White House. And it was, what's her name? Kellyanne Conway. And he said, listen to what Kellyanne Conway says, because it's the most offensive thing I've ever heard. And they run this clip, and Kellyanne Conway says, we are sick and tired of America. I almost swerved into the ditch.
Full stop. We are sick and tired of America.
Stop. Yeah, we are sick and tired. I thought, wow. And then this guy goes on and on about, can you imagine if somebody in the Obama administration had said that, or if any Democrat had said that? And I thought, That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. So I got back to the TV station. I Googled as best I could, and I found it. And the quote was absolutely correct. We are sick and tired of America being treated like a second-class citizen around the world, despite everything we do for the other countries in the world. I'm thinking that kind of changes the context.
A little bit.
Changes.
A little bit.
So I sent them emails. I tried to call them saying, hey, you're giving liberals like me a bad name.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it happens.
It happens on both sides.
It happens. And I don't think it happens as often on the liberal side, but my most conservative friend will tell you it doesn't happen as often on the conservative side, which again, that split, if you will. But how can you possibly do that? And I'm telling you, that's the most specific, dead-on example I can give you. They chopped, and you can do this with Trump's lawsuit against CBS. I mean, you can indeed chop and edit, and I hope he's not going to do it to me here later as well. But you can edit pretty much any conversation and have people say whatever you want them to say. Mm-hmm. And with our new technology, you can make it sound entirely legit.
You can actually have them say it almost, yeah.
But editing is a part of the business and has been since the very beginning. And what CBS 60 Minutes did with Kamala Harris was not a problem. It was just, I did it every day. Jerry Jones would say something. He's like me. You ask him a simple question, he talks forever. Well, we're not going to run the 5-minute answer. So I find the best 20 seconds and I'll put it on the 5 o'clock newscast. Then I'll find another 20 seconds and put it on the 6 o'clock newscast. And then I find an entirely different answer, all about the same topic, and put it on the 10 o'clock newscast. Every station in America has been doing that since the very beginning. And that's what 60 Minutes did. But in that one particular case, a liberal station that I was promoting to my friends of, hey, I finally found something that's kind of good to listen to. And they didn't even respond to my calls and my emails asking, what the hell are you thinking? Mm-hmm. And they just ignored it. So I've never listened to them since.
Let me ask both of y'all a question, because you, Dale, you just said that both sides do it, and we both all agree both sides. So where do we find that common ground where we can actually get out of our bubbles and actually have dialogue? Because that's the whole purpose of today's commentaries. Where do we find that?
It's hard. It's really difficult. I work on it.
It's a fine line. Where's that line drawn? Because I have friends that I refuse to let Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Jimmy Carter or anybody take my friendships away from them. So although I know how wrong and how awful what they believe in is, in my opinion, they probably say they think the same thing about me.
They probably think
so. Yeah. Where do we? I'm asking where do we? How do we find that line?
I think sometimes honestly, I think it's individual cases. That's what I've observed. I'm on Facebook a lot. I love Facebook. If you're friends with me, you know I love to be on Facebook, and I post about puppies and politics and eating and going to New York City. That's what I post about.
Well, you're not gonna like one of my future commentaries in a couple of months. You're not gonna like it at all.
I'm not scared. I'm not scared because I'll defend.
Don't mess with Golden, Dale. Don't mess with Golden.
Yeah.
But I've seen it's very individual. I do have, to your point about liberals having only liberal friends and conservatives having only conservative friends, and I've seen that with my friends. I have both. I have liberal friends. I have a lot of liberal friends. I also feel like that I don't think as many conservative friends, but I do have conservative friends who I go out and do things with. I meet out if I'm out of town, if I'm in New York and those friends are in New York, we get together for brunch, and it's something that we don't talk about. Now, I'm going to be real honest here too, obviously, and part of Facebook, and it's been around, I've been on it since, I don't know, like 2007. And part of Facebook is sometimes people are going to unfriend you, and sometimes you're going to unfriend people, and you're not going to know why people unfriended you, and they're not going to know why you unfriended them. Okay. Sometimes you're cleaning up your list. Sometimes you got upset by a post, what have you. But especially now in this current climate, I've seen it more. I've seen some people unfriend me and we don't have a conversation about it. And some people that I was good friends with for a long time, and I got unfriended and there was no conversation. And I'm like, okay, and I have to look at it. I take a step back and I say, they just didn't like my posts. They know where I stand and they don't agree with it to the point that they really don't want to see it on their feed every day. They just don't want to. And I don't, for some people, I don't know that that's the absolute truth, but I kind of add 2 + 2. And I've done it also. So I've told myself, you can't be upset about it because you've done it also. But there are some examples of what I just said where it has bothered me, where it's someone that I have been friends with for a long time. Like sometimes it happens with people that I haven't been friends with for a really long time. But sometimes it's happened with people I've been friends with for a long time and it takes me longer to process. But again, I go back to the thought in my head that they don't want to see it on their feed and they so vehemently disagree and they can't have the conversation with you or they don't want to. But then I have other friends, and I have some friends in mind right now that I'm thinking of, some friends who are so sweet. They are so sweet and they've been friends of mine because I grew up in Dallas. Since I was 9 years old. And they're friends actually maybe that I knew from before when I lived in Waco, Texas. That's where I was born. And even though we disagree and we don't talk about it, but I see their posts and they see mine, and they don't comment on my stuff. I don't comment on their stuff, but we have this thick thread between us, and we like or comment on non-political posts.
Blood's thicker than politics.
Yeah.
I think we made a mistake when we told Lila to open up a little bit. We created a monster here.
Competition there, Dale. Listen, real quick, I wanted to ask you, Dale, because you said in your commentary that you have a conservative friend that he doesn't see anything you believe what you believe and vice versa. Do y'all talk at all politics?
Oh, yeah.
Y'all do? So y'all just argue it? You just go at it? Or?
So that's one of the problems that the lovely Mrs. Hansen has with me is and I do think there's a basic issue of insecurity for a lot of people about this. I'm very secure in what I believe. I'm very comfortable with what I believe. And I'm not challenged or I'm not afraid of what you disagree about. Right. My favorite nights are sitting on the patio at my house after a nice dinner on the grill and then just arguing politics with a mishmash of people all night long. Those are my favorite nights. But over the last couple of years, both sides. My liberal buddy, the judge, doesn't want my conservative friends to join us. And my conservative friend always says to me, well, is the judge going to be there? Because they don't want to be there. I miss that because I tell them I do learn something. Not often, but I want to know, why do you believe that way? How can you possibly defend that? And I'm not afraid of their answers, but I think that's the problem that we have. You asked earlier how we get out of this. I don't know how we get out of this. That's my biggest concern looking to the future, although I don't have much of one. In length anyway.
We just relit that fire. But we just reloaded the.
I saw your contract. Well, Once I die, you stop paying. I laughed out loud. I've never had a contract, although it was a legitimate clause. I've never had a contract that said, "Well, if you die on us, we're not paying anymore."
Shout out to my attorney.
I do. I talk about this in a future podcast. That I spend most of my days thinking about the world that my granddaughter's going to live in, and as I said in the commentary today. I used to play golf, and I still do it to some extent. I don't play golf anymore, but I still get together with friends, and we still argue about politics, and then we just move on. But a card game that I was in for years, I did and we didn't talk politics at the card table, hardly ever. And I did a commentary about something on TV one night, and this one particular guy didn't like it, and he said, I don't want Hansen in our card game anymore. And the other guy said, yeah, well, okay, which bothered me a lot. But as I said to one of them, because the other two are still somewhat friendly, I just say to them, I said, I would have never allowed that to happen had the roles been reversed. And I've had friends, I've had dinner parties at the house, for example, and I'll invite this mix of friends. And as soon as one of them says, well, is so-and-so coming? I said, yes, he is. And he goes, well, then I'm not. I said, we're not going to worry about that anymore.
Right.
You're out. As long as soon as you throw up a flag to me that you're bothered by me having a group of people together, I'm out. I had a dinner party at the house one night. We had a guy from Cuba, a woman from Lithuania, 3 people from Finland, 3 people of color, 1 Hispanic guy, and 2 people from Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, man, that's a party.
And it was, we sat on our patio and we talked about life in Finland, life in Europe, life in Cuba. I've never had a better night in my life. I've just never had a better night in my life. And my one buddy from Finland, because they've got universal health care, was going back for surgery. And he said, well, how much does that cost? He goes, nothing. He said, well, how long did you have to wait? He said, I don't have to wait. And I thought my conservative buddy was going to swallow his tongue because he couldn't believe it, you know? And off we go talking about healthcare.
Right.
I mean, and that's what led to the split with my sister, was the Obama healthcare plan. And I'm like, who doesn't believe that we need to fix healthcare in America? The charges are just outrageous and nobody knows why. And this will shock a lot of people, I would think. I've said a lot of things on the air in my 41 years in Dallas. Far and away, the most vile response I received to any commentary I wrote was when I said, I don't know if the Obama healthcare plan is the best plan or the right plan, but I do know we need something better than we have now. So at least we need to consider what Obama is proposing and figure out the good and the bad of it.
Right.
Carol Reed, who was a political player in Dallas and just one of my all-time favorite people, called me and goes, oh my gosh, oh wow. The brave Dale Hansen took such a stand. Oh, he says he wants to improve healthcare. Oh my gosh. And I said, would you like me to read the comments that I've gotten to you from my emails? And I started reading them to her, and she was shocked. And again, Bill Maher did this, and I think it was on the Daily Show, I think, one of them, Daily Show, Bill Maher. If Obama wants to improve health care, Republicans will tell you that it's horrible. If Donald Trump wants to improve health care, the Democrats will tell you it's horrible. And they gave a long list of, Obama said this in 2013, the Republicans had a heart attack. Trump said it in 2024. Yeah, we're fine with that.
I think that,
and it's across the board, is it not?
Yeah,
and that goes back. We no longer have open, honest discussions and disagreements.
No.
We just choose up sides. And if you're not on our team, then we have to destroy you, because my team is the only team that matters. And that will destroy America. It absolutely will.
I think it is actively doing that. I think that all goes back to the media. But I want to stop right there, and we're going to take a quick break, and then we come back. I want to talk a little about cancel culture, and then we'll end this one. You've been listening to Dallas Dialogue with Dale Hansen, and we will be right back.
In Texas, the road is part of who we are. From Dallas traffic to Hill Country back roads, you need coverage that keeps up. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we're proud to serve Texans with the best home, auto and business insurance paired with honest rates, real protection, and local agents who understand life around here. Call us for a quote at 1-855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
Okay, we are back on Dallas Dialogue with Dale. Dale and Lila, when we left off, we were talking about, again, the media and how what role they play in dividing us. And one thing they've really gotten good at is this cancel culture. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody gets canceled, no matter if you're on the right, you're going to cancel the left, you're on the left, you're going to cancel the right. What can we do to stop this? Because it used to be free speech was the one thing we were guaranteed for sure. No matter what a jackass you were, you could go out there and talk noise. Now, I'm afraid to even speak on this little podcast that no one used to listen to, but now Dale's going to change that. Go ahead. I like your thoughts.
cancel culture, I've just seen it increase tenfold in the last few years, really. In the last, I don't know, I'd say 3 to 7 years. And sometimes for the smallest thing, and then other things, the dichotomy. Sometimes a really big thing that someone will do, a celebrity or someone in the media or someone politically, and it's just pushed under the carpet. It's swept under the carpet. And then someone else on the other side will say the smallest thing and they're done. They're done. Yeah. And so it's kind of hard to predict. It's a head scratcher.
It is head scratcher. Now, Dell, you might have gotten out of the game right at the right time, because some of the things you said towards the end might have canceled you.
Well, and some of the things I said at the end is one of the reasons I got out. As I've said, I haven't talked about this much. Here's a little bit of a news flash for you. As I always tell people, I was not fired by any stretch of the imagination. I had some people in management asking me to stay. But there were more people in management who shined a light on the exit sign at the end of the hallway in case I was having troubles finding it. And it was because of a joke that I made on the air. It was a joke that I was trying to kind of make a point, and it offended the liberals.
Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I do, quite honestly. Okay. Well, but it was. Well, no, I won't. Who am I to? It was a joke I made about women's pay.
Okay.
And it was the night of the debate, and the first debate was a disaster. Biden and Trump. And the second debate was
Harris.
Was by a woman. I forget who the woman was.
Harris.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I'm talking 2020.
Oh, 2020. I'm sorry.
And the moderator was a woman from NBC. Okay. And it was a very smooth debate, did a very nice job. So Pete Delka says to me, what do you think about that? Well, all of the people in power at Channel 8 were women. The news director is a woman. The 10 o'clock producer is a woman. The station manager is a woman. Then you get to the very top, and it's a man. And I then said, this is probably going to end my podcast here.
Oh, my God.
No, I then said, Pete Delka said to me, what do you think? I said, it just proves my point. You should always have a woman if you want the job done right. And especially because they'll work cheaper, and that leaves more money for you and me. And it was a direct shot across the bow, and stupid. But as I later found out, I called some people around town and said, I don't need to know like your exact salary, but I called a female anchor who does a lot of shows, been there several years. And she was making about, in her best years, she was making about 35 cents on the dollar for what I made to do 3 to 4 minutes.
Right.
And then when they slashed my salary drastically, because the business did start going backwards, when I was basically doing nothing, I had like 16 weeks vacation. I had the Johnny Carson contract. I mean, I only did my Sunday night show during the football season. And they were trying to find ways to reduce my salary. And it was down to, when I left, I was making about 30 cents on the dollar of what I used to make.
Correct.
But they made up for it. I'm not, but that 30 cents on the dollar of what I used to make was what she said she made in her
top of her game,
top of her years, which only proved my point.
Right.
And it was a point that I was trying to make a little bit of a point. I was also, quite honestly, just going for a cheap joke on the spur of the moment. I got crucified. Tegna, the head corporation, they wanted me fired. Wanted me 38 years at Channel 8.
Yeah.
I never even got a postcard. I never got a text from anybody in the Tegna Corporation when I retired after 38 years at WFAA. Not so much as a text message, because they want to be fired.
Right.
And it goes back to that cancel culture. What I find funny about cancel culture is I think it's driven in great part by the liberals who are so concerned about the words we use.
I agree.
Then the Republicans and the conservatives, rather, rail about cancel culture, and yet they're the first ones to do it coming at you the other way. And it's just, to me, it's laugh out loud funny, because I'm the guy, as I've said many times, the best thing about me that keeps me sane is I have the ability to laugh at everything. Unfortunately, the worst thing about me is that I have the ability
yes.
to laugh at everything.
Unfortunately, I
If
think
it's a good joke,
Yeah.
I laugh.
Yeah.
I don't tell a lot of the jokes that I laugh at. I make sure they stop at a point, whatever.
right.
But if it's a well-crafted joke, I'm laughing.
Plus, you're quick. I mean, I can
I'm
tell
laughing.
you're quick-witted. So,
But it is an issue, and I do think it was an issue because it's like everything else in this society. Pick a side. But I quite honestly, I would blame the liberals more for cancel culture. But the conservatives who rail about the liberal cancel culture are the first group of people to rail when a liberal says something
Right.
that they don't like.
right.
You know, they canceled the what was the Dixie Chicks.
Yes.
They basically lost their careers for a long time
Uh-huh.
because of a goofy statement that we don't like the president either. Trump is now threatening Bruce Springsteen and calling him a dried up prune because he made some incredibly strong comments that, quite honestly, I happen to agree with. But here they are defending free speech, unless, of course, you say something we don't like.
Right.
I don't like the argument that when people, and I'm guilty of it, but when people say, well, both sides are guilty. Well, in this case, both sides are guilty.
Agreed.
And I do think, as much as I hate to say it, I think it's an issue that was started primarily by liberals.
I tend to agree with you. I think the outrage.
Even though I am one. Yeah.
I think, let me ask you a question real quick. You've been in the industry for so long. When about what point in time would you say that you could have made that joke and it wouldn't have been an issue? In other words, when did we jump that shark?
Oh, I think I could have made that joke, and then I think I could have made that joke up until at least 2000.
Really?
I made a worse joke. I made a worse joke in 1983, and I'll tell you this one too. Just now that we're going down this rabbit hole, but to give you an example of how our society has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I made a joke in 1983. Robin, my wife's going to hate me if she hears this part of the podcast, so edit this out if indeed the lovely Mrs. Hansen is listening. But in 1983, I had just started at Channel 8, been there for a short time. And Robin Givens, who married the heavyweight champion Mike Tyson at the time, and they're being interviewed by Barbara Walters. And Mike Tyson was just like, he was so drugged up, he couldn't even talk. And Robin Givens just blew him up. I mean, she called him, sitting right there on the couch.
I remember.
And she's this piece of trash, this disgusting. Right. I mean, he slaps me around, he beats on me, he throws me off the wall, you know. And he just sitting there like an idiot. And she just goes on and on and on. So I ran a clip of that on the 10 o'clock news. And I then said, if my wife had said that about me on national television, hell, I might slap her upside the head too. A woman named Martha, and I forget her last name, forgive me, Martha, but Martha was running camera, and she laughed so hard, the camera shook. I mean, the camera literally shook. And then she leans her head around the camera and says, oh, my God, Dale, you can't say that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Martha, it was just a joke. And Doug Fox, who's one of the greatest reporters ever in the history of Dallas, he came in the next day, and he said, oh, my God, Dale, my wife and I, we rolled out of bed. We were laughing so hard. And then we realized that's an incredibly offensive thing to say, and you should never be allowed to say that. And then Katie Sherrod in the Star-Telegram wrote a long column demanding that I be fired. And Marty Haig, and this is the greatest part of the story that I've never gotten an answer to. Marty Haig lived in Highland Park, right? Well, I don't know if it's actually Highland Park, but it was right across the street from SMU.
Okay.
We finished the sportscast. We have like a 2.5-minute commercial and then like a 30-second goodbye. So that's a total of, say, 4 minutes max, tops. I walk into the newsroom and Marty Haig is standing there in his pajamas. 4 minutes. Now, unless he had a transporter in his bedroom, he somehow got out of bed, jumped in his car, and drove from SMU to the Channel 8 studios downtown in like 4 minutes. And I walk in and I look at him. I said, Marty, what the hell are you doing there? And he goes, I'm here because of you, you stupid. And he just unloaded on me. So I thought I was fired.
Right.
The next day, the great Dave Lane, the greatest general manager in the history of local television, calls me into his office. And I'm on the phone with this buddy of mine in Fort Worth. I said, you want to play golf? And he said, when? I said, in about an hour, because I'm going to be fired here and I got nothing to do. Carol Gonzalez, who was a great friend of mine, was the office manager and the office secretary. She runs into the office. She goes, oh, my God, you guys aren't going to fire Dale, are you? You're not going to fire Dale. So I come walking in, and Dave Lane looks at me and says, you really think we're going to fire you? And I said, yeah. He said, why? And I said, well, this man made it all the way from SMU in less than 4 minutes and screamed every name in the book at me. And I know I've bothered, I'm in trouble, and I assume you want to fire me. And he goes, no. And then the great Dave Lane says, do you want to apologize? I think you should, but it's up to you, which of course means you better apologize. But still, I really do believe this. And I've seen this to him later. What if I'd have said no? He goes, then you say no. And I do regret apologizing, but I did it again after that stupid joke about a woman's pay, because the only thing that happens when you apologize today, and even back then, the people, they don't accept the apology in any fashion, and they think you're joking when you apologize.
Right.
And I heard it every day. I heard it in 83, and I heard it in 2021. Oh, you're just joking. You're smirking. And I'm like, so I was serious when I made the joke, but I'm joking when I seriously apologize. But the main point of that is that thing blew over in no time.
Right.
I think that joke is more offensive than the joke I made.
That one left a bruise.
That one, to use a phrase.
That one's good. And
the only thing that saved me in 83, or a big part of it, everybody started writing into the letters to the editor and everything. So I guess we got to get rid of Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, I was about to say. That's the first thing I thought.
Jackie Gleason made a whole career of saying, Alice,
to the moon.
One of these days. And he would ball up his fist and say, to the moon, Alice. It was a joke. Did anybody think that Jackie Gleason was going to hit Alice in the face? But in today's world, you can't even make that joke. I then make my stupid joke, and I'm getting crucified. But I survived it. Here comes 2021. I make a joke that I think, unfortunately, it's true that women make less money than men.
Right.
Every woman we hired in the Channel 8 sports department, the station paid them less than we paid the guys. Every one of them.
Yeah.
Every one of them. And sometimes
I like that. Let me tell you, I'm sensitive and I'm a liberal. And I like that joke because of what you just said a minute ago, because it's true.
It's true.
That's why I don't like that other joke. I don't like that other one at all. But I like that one
here's the thing.
Because it's true.
The reason that I think the first joke wasn't as funny as some people reacted is because, A, it wasn't true. I would never hit my wife.
Right.
But it was a bad joke. But again, I apologize as much as I could possibly apologize. And then everybody just bagged on me for making this bogus apology. And the same thing happened in 21. I apologized again. And I said, it's true. A small part of me was trying to shine a light on an issue that's, I think, very important. But at the same time, it was also just kind of a joke at people that they know I respected all of them. Yeah. My 10 o'clock producer is a woman. My news director is a woman. The station manager is a woman. I said, it doesn't make any sense at all if I'm not working for women. Our general managers, I think there's been like 3 of them were women in the last couple of years, etc. But I got crucified, and it was somewhat made clear to me. So when are you retiring again? And I am bitter about this, and I haven't talked about it much because I did try to go out the door as the good soldier. I usually burn all my bridges on the way out and blow them up. And
public perspective, you did.
But I thought, okay, I'm not going to do it this time. So I went out very quietly and just, But and a guy said to me in the Dallas Morning News, he said, well, if you hadn't made that joke, would you still be retiring? And I said, oh, probably. And that was absolutely a true answer. And some of the people at Channel 8 got very offended that I left that little window there. Like, what are you saying? And it was I don't know. I hadn't planned on retiring because I had just signed a new contract.
Yeah.
3 months earlier.
Wow,
I had just
didn't
signed
know
a new
that.
contract.
Wow.
And no one from Tegna bothered to call and say, hey, wait a minute.
What about this contract?
You just signed a brand new contract for
Right.
2 years, which takes you to age 75. And now you're quitting 3 months later?
Yeah.
Not one person, because they all wanted to be fired. And that's why. But then one of the main people that I still respect to this day, she calls me and says, I'm going to put this resignation notice, because I told them I'm retiring. The one person said, I'm going to put this in my desk drawer, and if you want me to tear it up at 11:59, I will. And the other person in management said, yeah, I expected that.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, that's all they said. They sent back a response to my email, and all it said was, yeah, I expected that.
Right.
And then, like I say, for the next couple of months, and and it's kind of the part of cancel culture. I'll leave you with one part of this story, if I may.
Please.
So now I am back and forth. I'm thinking, okay, the money was still really good, and the job was easy, and it was still fun, and I loved. And I was kind of back. Well, maybe I won't retire. And I said, well, no, if you don't want to retire, no, we'll just tear it up. Whatever. We're going to promote Joe from within, so it's not like we're on a national search or whatever. And then here comes Pride Month, and this is kind of back to our cancel culture again. Here comes Pride Month. Well, the producer calls me and said, this is kind of in your wheelhouse. Could you write a commentary for the news tonight about Pride Month? And I said, well, that's, gay rights in America is kind of what put me on the national stage. Yeah, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
So I said, now you'll have it for 10? I said, yeah, I'll have it for 10. 15, 20 minutes go by. I get a phone call from management. And they said, you're going to write a commentary tonight about gay rights because of Pride Month. I said, yeah. They said, well, now just remember, we don't want you to offend anybody, and we don't want you to say anything controversial. And I went, I'm sorry, what again?
Did they know who they were calling?
Yeah. And I said, you want me to write about gay rights in America and Pride Month, but you don't want me to say anything controversial or anything that would offend anybody. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. You write the first line that meets that criteria, and then I'll flesh it out from there. Right. Just give me the first line that meets that criteria. Because if you say in Dallas, Texas, hey, we're celebrating Gay Pride Month in Texas, you're dead.
Controversial.
You're dead. So I hung up the phone, and I swear to God, I told the lovely Mrs. Hansen, and I told all my friends, if I had any doubts about it's time to leave, it's just been answered. But I tell you the truth, I love the fact, and my wife will tell you this as well, Northwest Insurance, you, Mark, you, Lila, and did I mention Northwest Insurance? Because I think that's what it says on the check. I am thrilled. I am absolutely thrilled that you've given me this opportunity because I've already written the commentary for next month and the following month if we need it, because I'm so excited to write again. I'm so excited to spark the debate again. And I thank all of you. I thank you, Lila. I thank you, Mark. And I thank Northwest Insurance for making it worth driving up 35 once a month.
Well, Dale, I cannot tell you what a thrill this is going to be with us. And we do. We're going to need more than 3 because we have a contract, buddy. Don't forget that. But
unless I die, of course, which is in paragraph 4. I love that.
I'm looking forward to hearing your voice again. Like I told you when we spoke the other day on air, I could tell the fire was still there. I knew you still had a lot to say. I like the public missed hearing it. So I'm like all the fans out there. I just want to hear what you have to say. And if you have any questions for me, Lila or Dale, Lila,
you can email it. We're on the same wavelength. You can email us at info@nwagencies.com. info@nwagencies.com. And for real, I think that we're going to have to call AT&T because for real, I think that inbox is going to fill up.
The server will blow up, but
Yes.
I hope so. If you have any questions for me, Lila or Dale, or any commentaries on your own, please email us. So.
info@nwagencies.com. podcast.com.
Yep.
We want to give a shout out to our podcast producer, Monkey. We also want to give a shout out to our social media producer that works closely with Mark and I, and his name is JoJo. We want to give a shout out to our jingle writer, Evan Panzer in New York. And we want to give a shout out to Ryan Gizas, who puts everything out for podcast consumption and YouTube consumption.
All right. Thank you. You've been listening to Dallas Dialogue with Mark, Lila, and Dale Hansen, and we will be back next time. Thank you.